Hey guys, I'm Dave and welcome to the Trull Gallery. Today I'm going to show you how I install built-ins. If you've been following the channel for a while, you've probably seen me do a couple of built-ins where I build them here in the shop and then take them to my client's home and presto, they're installed. But I thought today I'd show you how I install these cabinets. These are the first step of two built-ins. Not sure if you can see the white ones in the back, but they're going today too. We're going to show you how I install these and get ready for the second part of the build. Let's see if we can pull this off and still get home at a reasonable hour. For me, installation starts by loading up the truck with the cabinets, support and trim pieces, and any extra tools that are not already jammed in the back seat. It can sometimes look a bit like the Beverly Hillbillies, but I get everything there in one piece. Once I'm on site, I locate and mark the stud locations and, in this case, the center line of my two cabinets. I've set my laser at the height of the base trim, and if the trim isn't level, I set the line at its highest point. Now I can screw in my ledger board to the rear wall, ensuring that the top stays in line with my laser. This ledger will support the rear of the cabinets and give me a level support to start the assembly from. The front of the cabinets are supported by these adjustable feet. Back at the shop, I had marked their location, and I can now screw them into the cabinet bottom. I miscalculated the height of the baseboard, so to get the height I needed, I had to thread the feet nearly all the way out. In hindsight, I could have added blocks between the bottom and the feet so they'd be more stable. Now I can flip the cabinet over and slide it in place on the ledger board. I repeated that for the left-hand cabinet and set that in place as well. You might notice the adjustable feet ended up on some shims. I chose to add the shims so I could thread the feet back up into their sockets for a little more strength. I reset my laser to the top of the cabinets to ensure that I had them level and in plane. The two quick grip clamps help hold the face frames together, and once I've got them lined up, I can pre-drill a pilot hole through the stiles. The frames are secured with 2-inch long No. 8 wood screws, and a quick check at the top and the second screw is added as well. With the cabinets secured to each other, I can now attach them to the wall. My fastener of choice for this are 2.5-inch long washerhead screws. They're long enough to penetrate the cabinet's hanging rail, the drywall, and into the studs behind. The key here is to hit those studs, so it's worth the time to locate them well. If you miss a stud, try again. Drywall just won't hold a cabinet. I like to keep a level on hand to double check my work. Walls are usually wonky, so you may have to add a shimmer tube between the hanging rail of the cabinet and the drywall. Once I've got the top rail secured to the wall, I can add screws through the lower hanging rails. To make sure I hit the studs, I measure the locations of the top screws and transfer that to the lower screws. Now I can repeat the process for the next cabinet, securing it top and bottom as well. Then comes the obligatory tug on the cabinets to make sure that they're as sturdy as possible. Once I've cut my toe kick to length, which I prefer to do on site, I can get it ready to attach to the feet. I use a small square to mark the center line of each foot on the back side of the toe kick. These brackets come with adjustable connectors and they allow for some side-to-side movement. Now I can screw them to the toe kick along the center lines I just marked. I use my square to set the height down from the top edge, although that's probably not necessary. The height could vary, but you'll want to keep those center lines as close as possible. Now I can wiggle the toe kick in and press the brackets onto each of the legs. The doors go in next. I mark the back of each drawer for its location and set them in place on their slides. I left the shims hanging in the back as they'll never be seen in a drawer cabinet. If I was installing a cabinet with doors, it would usually have a back and the shims would be hidden. In a vanity that may not have a back, I would trim them off so they wouldn't be seen. If the drawers need any adjustment, this is the time to do that. I got lucky and these drawers lined up just right. Whenever possible, I like to use a jig to install door and drawer pulls. They're faster and help ensure consistency. These drawer faces are too large for the jig I own, so I have to measure everything out. Blue tape lets me do my layout and not mar the face. And while I usually clamp in a backer board to prevent the drill bit from blowing out the inside of the drawer face, I used a different technique here. I started with a small pilot hole through the face and drawer box. Now I can come back with a 3/16 inch bit, drilling partway through the front, and then finishing from the inside. It's an extra step, but it provides a clean hole with no damage to either face. The pulls can be installed next. These days it's common for this hardware to come with short screws for doors and longer screws for drawers. In this case, both screws were the wrong length. I came back later and replaced these long screws with some that are 1/4 of an inch shorter to better secure the handles. Washers can also be used, but I'd need 3 washers for each screw, and that just seemed to be an accident waiting to happen. I could just see a sweater getting caught on those protruding screw heads. Okay, let's fast forward a month. The countertop crew has come in and they have cut and set the countertop. And yes, the stained cabinets are now painted. Once my clients lived with it for a few weeks, they decided that there were just too many colors in this small room. So they painted the drawer cases to match the rest of the piece. To start the installation of the upper cabinets, I set my laser to show me the vertical center line of my cabinets. Now to locate those studs again. I've given up on stud finders and now I just use a stack of rare earth magnets. Move the magnet around the wall until they connect with the head of a drywall screw. Once I've located the screw, I mark the location. I usually make this mark on blue tape, but since this wall will be completely covered by cabinets, I can mark directly on the wall. Now I measure over 16 inches and start my next sweep with the magnets. Once I find one, I mark the location and continue along the wall. There should be one more stud on the far right, but I was unable to find it. These cabinets are supported by the counter, so I'm not too worried about the missing stud. My boxes are 30 inches tall, so I transfer my marks to about 31 inches off the countertop with a 4-foot level. Next, I set my cabinets in place so that the laser line is in line with where the 2 cabinets meet. I set the first trim strip in place, making sure it's standing plumb, and mark any bulges in the wall on the strip. I have a scribing tool somewhere, but I've had a hectic week and I forgot it at the shop. By holding a pencil flush to the wall, I can mark the material that needs to be removed from the trim strip. Since I was sure there would be some scribing, I prepared my fill strips with a 45-degree back bevel. Rather than having to remove trim that's 3/4 of an inch thick, I only have to clean up an edge that's less than 1/4 of an inch. Since I'm not removing a lot of material, I decided to cut to my line with a block plane. I check the fit often, taking off just a little bit at a time until I get a snug fit. I'll admit I'm not great at this, but that's why we have caulk. I used a pair of quick grip clamps to hold the filler strip flush to the face frame. Then I could pre-drill 2 pilot holes through the frame into the filler. I worked the bottom first, drilling, then driving a 2-inch No. 8 screw to secure the 2 pieces. Then I repeat the process at the top of the first cabinet. Then the left cabinet was set up the same way. I thought I'd have enough room to wiggle the 2 cabinets in with their fillers in place, but no luck. I'm not sure why, but after removing the right strip, I was able to set everything in place and reattach the strip. Before securing the cabinets to the wall, I want to secure them to each other. I've got a pair of pony cabinet claws that are great for this. Not only do they pull the stiles together, but they also force their faces to sit in plane with each other. Now we can drill an 1/8 inch pilot hole through the claws, flip the bushing out of the way, and drive more No. 8 screws through the claws, securing the 2 stiles together. If you're wondering why I didn't use these on the base cabinet, it's because those stiles are too wide for the claws to grab. I can now secure the cabinets to the wall with some more 2.5-inch washer head screws, driving them in at the stud locations I marked earlier. The top screws can be put in through the upper hanging rail that won't be seen. Once they're in place, I transfer those locations for the lower mounting screws and drive them in as well. After wrestling the two upper cabinets in place, they were attached to the filler strips like before. The only difference here is that I use the cabinet claw to help hold the upper and lower cabinets in place while I work. Your average kitchen may not have cabinets stacked on one another, but this built-in does. So I use the cabinet claws to help me secure them together. I chose to drill from the bottom rail up, as I thought it might hide the fasteners better. With the rails connected, I can repeat the same process on the center stiles. With all the cabinets connected, it's time to fasten the uppermost cabinets to the wall. Again, transfer the stud locations, drive in more 2.5 long washer head screws, and these guys are not going anywhere. Time to add the doors. I went into more detail on my last video on how I assembled these RTA cabinets, and I'll add a link to that below. Essentially, I drive in the top hinge screw part way, drive in the bottom screw, and then snug them both up. Once all the doors are hung, I can go back and make any adjustments to make sure that the doors are all in line and the gaps are even. One of the nice things about 35mm hinges like these is they can be easily adjusted in multiple planes, ensuring a clean look. After checking with my client to see where they wanted their pulls, I set my Kreg hardware jig so the pull would be centered on the stile and in line with the top of the bottom rail. I like to clamp a piece of scrap inside the door to prevent blowout when I'm drilling my 3/16 pilot hole. A bit of tape on my bit lets me know when I've fully drilled through the door, but not necessarily through the backer board. If all goes to plan, I get a nice clean hole on the front and rear of the door. Once the holes have been drilled, I can add the pulls. The shelves go in next. I'm not a fan of this style of locking shelf pin, but they came with the cabinets. They're fine if you don't need to move them often, but I prefer a standard steel shelf pin. I just didn't have any of the correct size. I find it easier to put in the lower 4 shelf pins, but only 2 of the upper pins. If you try and put in all the upper pins in, the upper hinge may get in the way of the shelf. Instead, set the shelf on 2 of the upper pins, rotate the shelf up, and add the other 2 pins. The lower shelf should just drop into place. After caulking any gaps and touching up any paint as needed, this built-in is complete. Well, except for the top trim piece that I may or may not have forgotten at the shop. Lucky for me, I have to come back to finish another built-in installation in the family room. If you take your time, ensure that your cabinet faces stay flush to each other, and check for plumb and level often, built-ins like this can go in pretty easily. And unlike most kitchen cabinet installations, none of these were strictly wall-mounted. I don't do a lot of kitchen cabinet work, but the installation process is mostly the same. The biggest difference is you'll need some kind of a support block or ledger strip to help hold the cabinet in place while you secure it to the wall. Another pair of hands is helpful too. I'd also like to apologize for the weird flashes that happened a couple times during this video. I'm having some technical difficulties with my video editing software, and they tell me they're working on it, but it's been a week already and I don't want to delay this video anymore. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this video. Is there something I could have done easier, smarter, safer? Drop in the comments below. I'd love to hear. As usual, I'll add some links to some of the tools and equipment I used during this video and here in the shop on a daily basis. Some of them have affiliate links, and should you happen to need one of those and purchase it through those links, it does help keep this channel going. If you enjoyed this video, maybe give us a thumbs up and share it with friends. And if you haven't already, maybe it's time to hit that subscribe button and a little bell so you get notified each time I put out a new video. Not sure what's coming up next, but It should be something interesting. Until then, great day, stay safe, and we'll see you soon.